Until the 1950s, the idea of launching anything into space was the stuff of science fiction. But with the successful 1957 launch of the Soviet satellite Sputnik, the goalposts were moved. It took only a month for the first animal to be launched aboard a spacecraft, and by 1961, human space travel was a reality. Also in the 1950s, the running world was experiencing a similar shift in its concept of what is physically possible. In 1954, Roger Bannister dismantled previous ideas of limitations and became the first human to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. His record stood for less than 2 months, and it soon became clear that we only had scratched the surface of humans' capacity for speed. 2 decades later, the world watched in amazement, though no longer in disbelief, as another milestone was reached. Today is Tuesday, August 12th, 2025, and on this day in 1975, New Zealander John Walker became the first human to run a mile in less than 3 minutes and 50 seconds. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. It's another Tuesday, which means that today's episode is sponsored by my race tats, my absolute favorite temporary tattoos with motivational sayings that I wear during every single one of my races. A few days ago, I ran my first race in 6 weeks and was quickly reminded why summer racing sucks so much. The Dragon's Den Half Marathon here in San Antonio is an incredibly hilly, multi-terrain race that is always a challenge, but it was especially tough this year because there was not a single cloud in the sky the entire time. Plus, I had 15 miles on my training schedule, so the moment I finished the actual race, I had to head back out for another 1.9 miles. I cannot express to y'all just how much I sweat during this race. And at every aid station, I also poured water into my hat and down my shirt. So after 15 miles, I was soaking wet. Oh, and the race finished at a park with a splash pad. So as soon as I was done, I went to cool off there. And that is just a very long-winded way of saying that my skin came into contact with all sorts of liquids pretty much constantly for like 3 hours. But the temporary tattoo from my race tats that I wore during that race looked like it had been freshly applied. Seriously, no matter how much sweat and water and probably dirt and other stuff came into contact with my skin, the tattoo did not budge. And that is one of my favorite things about the products from my race tats, because the races where I need a little bit of a mental pick-me-up are typically the ones where I end up the sweatiest. So I really need a temporary tattoo that is fully and completely waterproof. On Saturday, the tattoo I wore said, "Be strong, finish strong," which is one of my all-time favorite mantras that they offer. Listeners of Today in Running History can save 20% off of your entire purchase from my race tats using my code Hillary at checkout, or by using the link that I will put in the episode description. Now, we're going to talk about John Walker and his world record in the mile, but first I want to address something else. If you listened to yesterday's Podception episode with Carl Lewis, and I really hope you did, I signed off with a teaser that today's episode would be about an 80-year-old setting records in the marathon. And I got about 75% through with writing that episode when I realized that I had made a huge mistake. The article I was going off of said that she broke the marathon world record for women over 80 on 8/12/2002, which my American brain took to mean August 12th. But it turns out that 8/12/2002 for the rest of the world means December 8th. And it turns out that is actually when she set her record. So I will be telling y'all all about the incredible woman Helen Klein on December 8th, and today we'll talk about John Walker instead. So let's go ahead and do that. John Walker was born in Papakura, New Zealand in 1952. At 5 years old, Walker's dad assigned him the job of fetching a newspaper every day. Along the 2-mile round trip, there was a not particularly friendly dog. Fortunately for young John Walker, the dog was also not particularly fast, but Walker discovered that he was. And so a runner was born. Walker ran cross country in middle school and high school, but also played tennis, and it wasn't until he was 17 that he decided to focus exclusively on running. At that point, he began training under coach Arch Jelly. And fun fact / side note on Arch Jelly, tomorrow is his 103rd birthday. Soon after my Arthur Lydiard episode on July 6th, I got an email from a woman from New Zealand named Jane who mentioned that her mom was coached by Jelly and that he utilized a lot of Lydiard's training techniques. So shout out to Jane and her mom, and happy birthday to Coach Arch Jelly. 103 years old. That's so awesome. So John Walker began working with Jelly in 1969, and by the first day of 1972, Walker had his first real breakthrough. He had planned on attending a New Year's Day meet in Tauranga as a spectator, but was persuaded at the last minute to enter the 800 meters. He put on a pair of borrowed track spikes and ended up winning the race with a new PR of 151. Over the next 2 years, Walker continued to progress, establishing himself as one of the best middle and long distance runners in New Zealand. He set a national record in the 1500 meters in 1974 and went on to win all 19 of the races he ran during the European track season of 1975. By that summer, John Walker was growing confident that he could take down the world record in the mile, which by that point stood at 3:51 flat. There was an upcoming meet in Göteborg, Sweden, and Walker convinced them to change the 1500-meter race to a full mile so that he had an opportunity to go after that record. In the weeks leading up to the meet, Coach Jelly had Walker rein in his speed work and up his overall mileage to focus more on endurance. By the time the two made the journey to the other side of the world, Walker knew he was ready to make history. It was dangerously windy the day of the race, but by the time the start of the race approached that evening, the wind had slowed and the conditions were nearly perfect for a world record attempt. The meet directors brought in a Swedish runner named Goran Saumark, who specialized in the 800 meters to act as a pace setter. The gun went off and Saumark took off at a pace that was about a second faster than necessary. The two men finished the first lap in 56.3 seconds, and before the end of the second lap, the pacemaker dropped out and John Walker was on his own. He reached the halfway mark in 1:55.5 on pace to tie the existing world record. It was on the third lap that John Walker made the bold move to speed up, crossing the 3/4 mile mark in 2:53. And the final lap was his fastest, 52.4 seconds. With 200 meters to go, Walker's friend and Olympic medalist in the high jump, Dwight Stones, shouted words of encouragement, which Walker later confirmed gave him the strength to finish even stronger. As John Walker crossed the finish line, a stopwatch was immediately thrust in front of his face. It read 3:49.4, a full 1.6 seconds faster than the previous world record of 3:51 even, set just under 3 months earlier. John Walker went on to win the 1500 meters at the 1976 Olympics and still lives in New Zealand, where he and his wife manage an equestrian store. He also presumably reads dates, day first, then month, then year, like almost everyone else around the globe. Something you can bet that I will not forget again. And that is today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share, turn on alerts, rate 5 stars, and then send this episode to every Kiwi you know. Then tune in tomorrow as we meet a London Marathon champion and hear about the world record that took him decades to learn that he even held. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Along the 2-mile round trip, there was not a particularly friendly... Okay. Alright, there's something about a dog here. Woof, woof. Okay. And I said papakora correctly, but then I messed up a dog. Okay. At 5 years old, John... No, I already said that part. Okay, we're just going to go to the along the 2-mile part. Okay. He had planned on attending a New Year's Day meet in Tauranga? Tauranga? We're going to go with Tauranga. Okay. Let's try that again. There was an upcoming meet in, is it Gothenburg, Sweden? Gothenburg? How do you say that? Sweden. Goutbag? What the heck is that? Goutbag. Okay, that is not what I would have gone with. But I guess that's why I don't speak Swedish. All right, let's try this again. He finished that lap, and no, he didn't finish the lap in 1:55. That's like me running a lap. He went through the halfway mark. Okay, hold on. He finished in 800 meter. He finished 400 meters in 1:55. Can you believe it? It read 39:40. No, it didn't. Damn it. Walker went on to win the 1,500 meters at the I'm so close to the end. I can do this. Okay. And to the world record. No, as we meet and learn about the world record. God dang it.